G'day guys, Mac with the Outer Circle. Today, I want to look at the Horus Heresy character series. Not the Primarchs. I don't want to cover the Primarchs until we get the Khan. Once we've got the Khan, then we can look at every Primarch. So, let's not look at the Primarchs today. Instead, let's look at characters. Specifically, Space Marine, Custode, Talons of the Emperor characters. I'm not including the two Mechanicum characters though, because Scoria and Archmagos, Dracovic, they're kind of the odd ducks here because they're just an amorphous mass of shit going on. And really, I think they need their own discussion. Anyway, Abaddon and Loken right here are obviously the first characters released, and roughly chronological order is what I'm going to go through. I'm going to talk about the things I like and dislike about the various sculpts, not so much about the rules or anything. And the reason I'm doing this is because I haven't really overviewed all these different character models, except for briefly mentioning some of them during the Getting Started videos as good bases to use for conversions. So today I want to take the chance to remedy that and do something a little bit more positive. Alright, well, all that's out of the way. Abaddon and Loken. First off, Abaddon. I quite like this model. He's a big Terminator, he has a nice little base, it's not too over the top what's going on with the base. Loken looks like Benicio del Toro. He is a beautiful model, he really is. The big letdown in the model is the weapon. The weapon looks... it's okay, but between the fancy looking chainsword and the bolt pistol, it's really nothing fancy to look at. So I think it's kind of a letdown. Abaddon though looks really great, especially just the little things like the little Eye of Terror. It's called the Eye of Terror, not the Eye of Horus, the little round one on the back of his power fist there. And you can kind of see just those hints of 40k Abaddon, and I really wish they'd carried through this Cataphracti armor when they did the resculpt of him for 40k. In fact, it's a shame they didn't, because linking back to this Heresy era look instead of that 40k style of armor, I think would have worked out better. But it is what it is. Abaddon is very understated, and I love it. I love the fact that he's not anywhere near as over the top as a 40k model might be. And really, we need more of that. Loken's big letdown is the cloak. I'm not a huge fan of cloaks on models. Some models it works on really well, especially if you use like a decal or something, or some freehand to really make the cloak fancier, but for me it does nothing here. The practicalities of battle, at the time this fight is taking place, these characters have been involved in a months-long siege. I'm thinking Loken probably would have ditched the cloak, but whatever. Neither here nor there. Loken's armor, for that fact, has that lovely little Eye of Terror icon on the right knee, the Eye of Horus on the right shoulder, and just, his armor is a beautiful stylized version of Mark IV with the little bits of gold trim edging it out, kind of like a Mark III armor does. Just beautiful. I love these real early models in the character series. The simplicity says so much. And even the base, like this is the ruins of Istvan III that they're fighting over. The bases are really understated. It's just a little bit of gravel, maybe a couple of millimeters in height added to them. They're not on top of giant tanks and knights and stuff like that. You know, there's only a few corpses, skeletons laying around. Yeah, I really love this piece, and I love both the models in it. Moving on, the two biggest dicks in the Heresy, Erebus and Corvon. These two have some interesting details, some little quirks that I love. First of all, again, very understated base. This base has things like a hollow side here, where it's just been painted black. A lot of the later character series models come with big clip-on parts that cover up wherever the bases slot in and such, but because you're viewing this from the front, if it's in your display cabinet or whatever, you won't notice it's there. As for the two characters themselves, Erebus was very much modelled, according to the sculptor Edgar Skoromowski, that he wanted to emulate the Dark Apostle from 40k at that time, which was the first iteration of the Dark Apostle people might remember in Finecast. So the ritual scarring on the face, the kind of weird cloth tabard he has hanging from the, I suppose from his belt buckle there, has all these runes and stuff carved into it to look very much like that. It's great how he's got that little glove instead of a traditional power armored gauntlet on his hand with just these creepy pale fingers exposed. Oh, I love it. Even just the little things like on the back of his backpack there, that little skull is such a 1990s style of skull that's been sculpted into the backpack, and it's great. It just reminds me of those models I first fell in love with 40k. And it's cool to see those kind of details here. And yeah, the armour is stylized that he's wearing, but it's not too crazy. If you removed his arms and replaced them with a different set of power armour arms and gave him a different helmet, he wouldn't look like a word bearer at all. He could be a chaplain in pretty much any legion. So it's little things like that that make a model more versatile and just great to be around. As for the staff, I think the only big letdown on it is the fact that it does have the sculpted on fire, the brazier in the skull. But it's only a minor thing. As for the little candles and such, and the wax melting down his shoulder pad, that's just one of those cool touches that I love. Then we get to Corvon. Corvon has a very interesting thing going here, that his rules state that he's not actually a proper space marine. He's someone who was brought up to that level too late in life. And they're actually showing it with the model. You can just sort of see in the palm of his power fist, you can see a regular hand is actually inside there. If we look at him from behind, you can also see that he's wearing regular power armor, and he's wearing this suit of Terminator armor over the top of that power armor. His power armor is actually clipped in. He's wearing it like an exosuit, as opposed to regular Terminator armor. You can see the darker grey of his normal Astartes power armor underneath it. It's everything I wish the Centurions in 40k were, because that's probably their biggest downside. And as I spin him around here, you'll be able to see, hopefully, these little details, like the back of his legs. And you can see the power armor that he's wearing underneath, and how much shorter than the actual Terminator armor he physically is, and how it has to have these little pistons and such on the outside to articulate the different knee joint from where his actual knees are, which are much higher up, kind of in the back of his the armor's thighs. And yeah, if only they'd done that with Centurions, instead of those big, derpy, bulky armors they're wearing with giant drill hands. If they'd done something like this, where it's more sleek and refined, like this is literally a set of Terminator armor that he's bolted into, that's fantastic! Oh, I'd love to see more of that. Alright, Kellis Typhon. Oh, this model is so much better than the 40k version. Okay, it's little things. The helmet is correct, for a start. It's that same horned helmet, but it looks like a cataphracti type of helmet. And then you've got, of course, he's got the cataphracti armor on, but they've added on the little chemical bottles so that it can release toxin out the front of his knees or shins. He's also got not the destroyer hive, but it's like the man-made preemptive version of that, where he's got these chemical agent releasing plumes on the top of his armor and chemical vats on his backpack. He has the chem flamer mounted to his wrist that he can fire, as well as his man reaper. Just, again, simple. And he has a bigger display base, but this one at least matches his Primarch. It looks like the two of them could almost clip together into a diorama. Not the sort of thing you can say about a lot of the other ones that come later. And look, the actual base, if you put him onto his 40mm, take him out of the display piece, is actually pretty damn small. Pretty small and refined. Also, his head without the helmet, he's got a pretty cool looking face. It's a really nice little sculpt. So a lot to love here. A lot to love. simplicity is a virtue all of its own. Alright, Khan the Betrayer, or in this case Khan the Bloody, because he hasn't quite got the Betrayer name yet. So again, very much like Angron. Now this is a thing you find with a lot of the models that Edgar Skoromowski has done. So he did Erebus and Corvon, Kellis Typhon here, and he also did Khan the Bloody. With the models he did, he's sort of got something going on that reminds you of the Primarch, whether it's in the basing or... Well, in the case of Khan the Bloody, the Marine being massacred, having his arm cut off and flying off this rocky base, is so much like Angron. Angron has the same thing going on where he's got 3 dead Marines on his base, because, well, it's Angron. Khan has these cool little touches like the Gladiator or Pit Fighter style of armour that he's got down that left hand guarding his forearm, the vambrace. And he's got the chains, of course, on the right arm. Little cool World Eater symbol in the back of the backpack. I love the little touches like that. His plasma pistol's the same as the 40k one. It's a 30k style barrel, but it's got that skull cap on the end of it. It's just one of those cool little touches. There you can see the skull a little better. I love the little rivets or knobs that hold the monomolecular studs, I think they call them, that hold the bits of armor together. Looks great. He's sort of got like that Greco-Roman style chest plate where it's almost like they've sculpted muscles into the ceramite, but it's not like the shining golden six-pack you see on Blood Angel's Sanguinary Guard, for instance. It's much more understated. It looks nice for it. And also the helmet. It's basically his 40k helmet minus the bunny ears, which is that little central ridge, which is a picture straight out of the books. They also have a version of him here where you can use Gorschild. So it's basically Khan from 40k at that point. So lovely little model again. Alright, Savitar. Savitar's a funny one. I actually quite like the model. It's strange to me, however, that they would have the dead model on his base as a white scar as opposed to being perhaps a dark angel. Might have been a bit more fitting, but it works. It works. He has a lot of detail going on this model. First of all, he has the best bat-winged helmet out of any Night Lord's model ever. The fact there's just like this creepy bat-snouted piece of bone on the face with these tall, very thin bat's ears really works for me. I always sort of despise those Night Lord's helmets that had the big giant bat wings in 40k. It was just too big and too obnoxious. This, though, works perfectly. I love the fact that he's got, bits of Dark Angel helmet wing hanging off his belt. It shows he's sort of gotten around a bit. Has these cool skulls on his shoulder pads, on the backpack. The one thing that's a miss for me is on that left shoulder there. You see there's like these 3 bony barbs, almost like a bat's wing or something, with rotting flesh hanging off. That bit's superfluous. Get rid of that bit and give him just a normal shoulder pad made with a Night Lord's Legion symbol on it. Perfect. Other than that, I love that he's got the pointy feet, the very pointy shins. The armor has just tiny bits of trim that break it up a bit. The chest plate is beautiful with that little scroll work, as well as those dark bronze edgings. Again, gushing for it. His head, I could go without it. It's not a terrible head by any means, but I think the helmet in this case adds a lot to the model and is definitely the better choice. The base is okay, but we're starting to see the creep in of the giant base going on here. Yeah, does the base need to be so excessive? Probably not. So moving on, we get to Zadilayak and the Blade Slaves, which sounds like a terrible rock band. I like this model a lot. Where I think it's a miss is on the left arm. It's almost like the shoulder pad is warped or something. It's this weird shape. A really weird shape. And it's got like this puffy Empire style bit of cloth hanging at the bottom of the shoulder pad. And then his normal arm sticks out of that. I don't like the look of it. I think just a bare arm like a World Eater. completely bare arm, or just a normal power armored arm would be perfectly fine, because frankly there's so much going on with the rest of the model, it would be fine. Again, I'm not a fan of sculpted on flames and smoke, and he has this sort of smoking brazier on his staff, which I really dislike, but I like the staff itself. I love his helmet, the fact that it's actually a demonic mask, and he's not meant to ever remove the mask. The little Chaos Trophy racks on the backpack look fine. The chest is this weird demonic, there's like little blood chalices built into it, as well as a burning brazier. Yeah, I really love the model. It's just that left arm and that smoke coming off the brazier are two things that really need to be removed. As for the blade slaves, they're Galvorback, and they're nice. They're exactly what you want from a Galvorback type miniature. They got these weird hulking mutations that make no sense, and they're just chaos personified. I really love this crazy, weird, possessed blade he has. This hunched back look to the Marine, and of course the other guy that has... I think his sword is the worst of the two weapons, this sort of sword hand he has, where it's almost like it's sprouting from the palm of the hand, but they're both perfectly fine, perfectly acceptable models for what they are, which is they're just the blade slaves. They're just the guys that are hanging around with this guy. So, yeah, here's another cool model. Alright, Amelia's Dinah. This is a favourite of mine. I just love the sculpt, the fact that he's like the traditional general as opposed to the I'm going to charge into you in combat and hit you with this hammer. He's relaxing, resting on his weapons at the back of the battlefield, almost like a promo picture. Like you could see this guy in a recruiting poster. I'm fine with the bare head. I wish it did come with a helmet option though. I think the Alpha Legion have some beautiful helmeted heads, and they look really good on there. In fact, I'm guessing someone has put a helmet on him, one of the Alpha Legion helmets in the fan art section. But yeah, it's a lovely model. So he has this really cool sword. I call it, was it the Beater and the Biter, Glamdring and Orchest, the two swords from The Hobbit. One is Gandalf's, one is Thorin's. This is just straight up Thorin's sword. This is Orchest. Right down to this sort of sheath and everything's the same. Has this sort of cool, twisting, knurled handguard on the actual sword itself. The grip on it looks really cool. The scales on the armor are very understated. They're there, obviously, but they're not these huge, stonking scales just sticking out of every surface. They've wisely chosen to use them just on the outer two shins and on the chest piece. It's a masterclass in being busy and understated at the same time. Just that perfect balance going on here with this miniature. Right down to the Hydra's heads on the hammer, which also has that twisting, scaled grip. The shoulder pads have these Hydra symbols on one and this studded look on the other with trim. But the fact that the trim only goes around the top half and the side edges of the shoulder pad without extending all the way around the base of the shoulder pad, and it kind of adds a level to it because it stops it from going overboard with having all this silver and gold trim. He also has the sort of communications backpack like a Master of Signals does, and the wrist readout to go with it on his hand, on his vambrace. And yet it works. Everything about this model works. Little venom spheres on his hip, and the base itself is pretty understated. It's just a little mound of rubble with a bit of a Thalax leg or an arm, and then he's on foot after that. It's great. It's fantastic. I love understatement in models, and this is just that perfect balance of busy and clean. Then we reach Eidolon, which is the first model I looked at and went, whew, that base is getting excessive, or at least for a character series Marine. And I mean, excessive is okay with such an imposing character as Eidolon, I suppose. Well, even now it looks like he's menacingly staring at you on the screen. I love the hammer. The hammer is beautiful and looks totally like something Emperor's Children would use. The shoulder pads are fine. I don't like the Architect pistol and the big cable dangling off it. It just seems too clunky for this character. And the backpack as well. I'm not a huge fan of it. It's got like these little sonic shriekers or something going on above it. I prefer just a straight up normal backpack, and of course the cloak and backpack combination with the jump pack doesn't make sense to me. Remove the cloak, change the weapon in the left hand, and of course the Skrillex haircut, get rid of that, put the helmet on him, and he is a much better looking model for it. Let's see. I'm sure he comes with the helmet. Yeah, the helmet's a pretty nice helmet. Put the helmet on him, remove that weird pistol and the big cloak. And of course the base is very over the top, because look at the sort of base we're now getting up to here. Even when you remove him from the base, he's still a pretty big guy. Okay? Yeah, looks much better with the helmet. The base is too much. The base is way too much. And yeah, okay, when it's on the tabletop, it's not terrible, but it's still a bit excessive for me. Trying to cram more and more big demolished vehicles onto a base, I think, is a bad sign. When you can go for something like what Khan or Typhon have, Khan especially, actually, where it's just, you just stand on a little bit of rock. Nothing wrong with a little bit of rock. Alright, moving on. Alexis Pollock. Here's another cool model, and I think I'm going to go on a limb here and say the model whose body is used in the most conversions for Marine characters in 30k. Because it's got a few things that really help people with that. First, nothing on the legs. The legs don't have anything on them that forces him to be of a particular legion. The only mark on his main body that ties him to a legion is that fist and little laurel wreath on the chest. So people only have to clean off that one part, and they now have a model that they could use in any legion, and so they do. I love the studded right shoulder pad there. It's like an overlapping shoulder pad, almost like a Cataphractii Turnator's shoulder pad, but curved and power armorized. And I like the left one too. I just would prefer two of the right shoulder pad for like conversions and such, so I keep that cool look. The head is perfectly passable. The shield, it looks beautiful. I love that shield. Especially the colour palette they chose for it. Normally, I don't criticise the colours or paint jobs too much, but I really want to highlight how much I love this particular bronze. It's a great look. On the back here, of course, we have the built melter gun. And it works. It's big, though. It's very big in that power fist. It doesn't unbalance the model because you've got the shield on the other side of his body to help balance him back out. But he's a big stonking melter gun on the back of him. The style of backpack he has as well, I love it. It's almost like a miniature version of what the Primarchs have, with these sort of enlarged nacelles on the ends of them, and the little cables. A better way of making the Mark III backpack. And of course, on the base, we also have another one of these sort of over-the-top bases with a big Iron Warriors banner on the ground. Now you see, unlike most of the character series, who you're free to interpret who you have on the base. Like, again, we'll use someone like Savitar as an example. That Marine on the ground could be painted as any legion. Same with Khan. This Raven Guard he's killing could be any legion. So Typhon doesn't even have dead Marines on his base, neither do Erebus and Corvon. So neither does either of these guys. So here, though, you're forced to paint Iron Warriors. You've got no choice in the matter because it's a giant embossed Iron Warrior banner. That to me is a bit of a downside. I get why they've done it. It makes it easier to paint the model than using decals, especially because the Iron Warriors didn't have a decal sheet at the time this was created. But still, if they had to have a banner on there, I mean, because they didn't have to have a banner on there, it could have just been more of this metal plate work or even a dead Marine. They could have done something else. Alright, Sigismund. This is the first one that's a real miss for me. I don't really like this model. Why? Why? It kind of... Everything that can be wrong for me is wrong. First of all, completely over the top base that doesn't add to the model. Sigismund is kind of understated. He's a duelist. He is the right hand of his Primarch, the kind of guy who would go in and mano in mano 1v1 anyone in the Heresy and win the fight. There are very few people who can measure up to Sigismund. You've got someone like Khan, whose just sheer aggressiveness can carry him over the line, as well as being very skilled. You have Savitar, whose dirty fighting will get him over the line, and he's highly skilled. Corvon, who I reckon is probably the best matchup to him. You've also got Raldoran and Azkalion, who are both pretty considerable fighters in their own right. They would probably give it a fair crack. I don't even think I'd put Lucius up there, to be honest. I think that's probably it for the list of guys who could really take on Sigismund. If anyone has any really good suggestions, I'd like to hear them, but yeah, this guy is the MVP. It's a pity his model isn't, though. The Mark II armor and this weird pose that he's got, where I get what they're going for. They're going for... It's like that move at the end of Highlander, where the Kurgan's having the final fight with Connor McLeod, and they salute one another with the swords, and then McLeod takes this very pose up with the one left hand held forward, the sword held up in high guard, the weight is on the back leg. It's a cool look, but it doesn't translate to Mark II power armor well. It just... Something about this pose is a bit quirky to me. I don't mind the tabard, that is the bit of cloth with the Templar iconography on it, that's fine. The bare head's fine. Has a lovely backpack. This shoulder would have benefited more, these shoulder pads, if they were more like Amelia's Dinah's shoulder pads. Remember, I was saying the shoulder pads work really well on Armelius because they don't have the trim on the bottom edge. It's only around the top and sides. So when we get up to Sigismund, his trim does continue around the bottom of the shoulder pads. I think it's worse for it because they become very busy because all the space, all the yellow on it, it's filled up. You have this really close-knit set of studs on the shoulder pad on his left shoulder, and then a giant fist icon on the right, as well as these big yellow nodules, I don't know what you call them. The little detail in his Mark II armor, like the Raptura Imperialis and the little filigree, that's fine, but the black sword's fine. But yeah, just the Mark II power armor and the pose, the squat legs. It's the squat legs part of the pose that kills it for me, I think. It makes it look like his legs are 2/3 the length of a normal leg, and his torso is super tall because of it. And I mean, I've seen this model in person plenty of times. It looks okay in person, but it's not a great model for me. And of course, the base is huge. Even when he's not plugged into the quarter of a Sicaran tank that is his normal base. I mean, $110 Australian for this is... Whew, that hurts. So, yeah, that's Sigismund. Not a big fan of this one. Alright, Magister Samon of the Thousand Suns. The man who looks like a rat. I don't know. They definitely got different painters in because look at the facial features here. Compared to the highlights, the edge highlights has been taken up to 11 on this model. And the freehanded stuff on the back of the head is nice, the tattooing. But yeah, he looks like a rat. Like he's about to just nibble some cheese. The actual armor is beautiful. The staff weapon that he's holding is lovely. Where it goes wrong for me, and I have this model, is this cloak is just a giant chunk of resin. Probably because this is a CAD sculpt. And this is roughly the time period, I think, where we've gone from traditional sculpting on these Primarchs to full-on, completely CAD sculpting. They may have done... I just said Primarchs with characters. They may have done parts of these characters digitally. They may have done them traditional sculpting. I don't know. And it's great that I don't know. But by the time we get to Amon, I do know. That chunk of cloak is just so thick and chunky. And it really doesn't need to be this big, thick, chunky cloak. It would work if it was a nice, thin cloak, more like, frankly, like Loken's cloak. If you took Loken's cloak and put it up here on a mod, it would look much better. As for the rest of the model, the book, the little tassels, everything's great. He just has this boring Mark IV regular backpack though, which is a bit strange when he himself is so ornate, right down to this pointless, ugly wing that's coming out of the right shoulder pad, which is the part I hate most on the model. Even more so than the cloak. If they'd remove that, just let the shoulder pad breathe a little, and then let me put a nice little Legion icon onto that, it would have looked much nicer. And on the backpack, where the little gold vent is in the center of the backpack, that should have been a Legion icon too. But I suppose that's probably nitpicking. Otherwise though, love the model, and it kind of shows what Ahriman could have been if Games Workshop didn't shoehorn him into that terrible plastic model in the Burning and Prospero box, which frankly could have been any plastic sorcerer instead of being Ahriman, because it deprived us of what could have been a fantastic character series model, just like Khan is, just like Abaddon is, and just like Typhon is. Unfortunately, the Thousand Suns miss out. Oh, I don't like this model. Alright. Where to begin on this model? Well, before when I spoke about Alexis Pollock, I pointed out how beautiful this bronze work on the shield is. I'd like to contrast that now with the terrible blending job and highlighting job on this power axe. Ugh. Alright. Pedantic parts aside, this model is horrible. Why? Why though? Well, they've fixed the Space Wolf fur. That's a good start. Let's see. Can I nail it down to any specific key things? Well, first, this left shin, just being a solid metal hunk with diamond-shaped studs coming out of it, does nothing to add to the model. It looks more like a Sons of Horus feature more than anything. Not a good look. So that's kind of craptacular for a start. The cloak is okay. I think a traditional wolf cloak, though, more like a Logan Grimnar, would be better. The heavy bolter's fine. The wolf itself is well sculpted. I guess it just makes him look very right shoulder heavy. With this massive gun, the big wolf, and then this tiny, very fine axe with a massive axe head. It's bizarrely proportioned, basically. It's just something not quite right with the model. And the head, of course, fat bastard from Austin Powers, doesn't do anything for me. I mean, this model would look 10 times better in Cataphractii armor, but it's in Tartarus, is what it is. They could have done something maybe with the chest. Instead of that necklace somehow hanging off where there is no neck, I guess it's just bolted onto the armor. If they'd got rid of that, and then put a nice traditional sort of space wolf, maybe two wolves' heads opposite one another, kind of forming an Aquila type shape on the center of the chest, would look much nicer. It'd help fill in that. It's kind of like it's the most blank spot on the armor, actually. Maybe that's it. You've just got that big grey patch right in the center of him, when everything around that is busy with something. Yeah, it's just... It's very hard to explain what's wrong with this model, but I don't know anyone who does like it, so I can't objectively tell you what it is, what is wrong with the model, but nobody seems to like it. If you like this model, if you like it, or even if you love it, if you're some kind of psychopath, let me know. I'm really curious to meet the person who likes this model, because I haven't met it yet. Every single person I know who has Space Wolves and wants this guy, for whatever reason, rules-wise, they convert him. They might use his arm with the heavy bolter off the actual model, and that is it. Everyone else is using 40k and 30k parts and converting their own, because this is ugly as fuck. I want to know how many of them they actually sold. Ugh. Ooh, Chinzar. Master of the Kashyyyk of the White Scars. I spoke about him the other day, so I won't go into it too much. Not a bad model. Base is not too excessive. I want to know how he got the pilot out of the Dreadnought, though, because the pilot's legs, essentially part of him, seem to have come from up inside the head of the Dreadnought. So shouldn't this guy's head have been up there? Or somehow he's pulled him out. Anyway, whatever. Nitpick. The model is nice. I don't think the shoulder pads add anything to the model, though. There needed to be some sort of different trim or Legion iconography on them. The shins, of course, I referred to in another video. The shins needed to have the same geometric patterns and iconography that the Ebon Kashyyyk have on them. Torso looks great. The belt buckle and that's fine. The stitching and such in these big armor plates doesn't work for me. I think it's a little bit too busy without actually adding much of substance to the model, because it's completely impractical for a start, and also pointless because there's big rivets to hold those armor plates together. The stitching is kind of superfluous. I get why it's there. It's meant to look like, say, a samurai's laminated armor or lamellar armor, but it does nothing for me. And the Dao blades looking more like little machetes, banana machetes, as opposed to either a really sleek knife or blade like a Xian or like a heavy cutting Dao. It's neither of those things. It's almost like a Greek Copus blade or a European Falcata. Yeah. It's not terrible by any stretch of the imagination, but this is not a model I am in love with. And if I did get one, I would definitely have to convert it. I think the best example of really nice White Scars weaponry is the sword on the 40k Deathwatch character. If they had that sword by 2 on this guy, with its dragon heads and big sort of saber shape, that would be shit hot. This as it is, though, it needs some work. Rel'Doran, first captain of the Blood Angels. This is a funny one, because again, this is part of that non-metallic metallics trend that's been going on with the last couple of character series models, and it adds nothing to the model because it looks like a fucking 40k model. Sorry, it's got to be said. Let's compare some of these early character series models, and they've got a realism about them. I mean, look at Khan here, right? His armor is beat up. There's little scratches and nicks all over it. The metallics around the shoulder, the trim, it's beat up. It's different colors. It's patchy, like it's been corroded, and bits of it have rubbed against other surfaces and sort of been polished and scratched, shiny again. And there's all these little bits of sponging and chipping all over the armor plate. Even the weapons itself, like his plasma pistol, has little bits of silver chips on the plasma pistol where, it's rubbed up against something or it's overheated and the paint's boiled off. And then you go from that to Rel'Doran, and it's just a flat red. Just a flat matte red armor with edge highlights. Where are the edge highlights on Nathaniel Loken and Abaddon? These guys are in kind of a flatter armor too, but what they've done is they've pre-shaded or whatever, so the armor, as it gets towards the edges, is darker than it is in the center of the armor plate. And again, they've got that sort of true metallic going on, where they're using real golds and silvers to bring out the model, which is not something that they've really done later on, because Rel'Doran it's not it. And of course, the only place he's got these little scratches randomly is just in the middle of its... You know what? I'm talking about the paint job, which I shouldn't be. I should be talking about the model itself. But it goes to show just the change in the Forge World models. So, let's see. He has blue hair. That's cool. The demon hand on the base is a nice little touch. I actually think that brute hand, demon brute arm, is really cool. I like the blade and the blade shape. The pose is very understated, which I don't know if it works in the favour of a Blood Angel. They are a very regal marine after all, but still, I think something more aggressive would have worked. More like that Sigismund pose, perhaps, would have worked better in this instance. He could just be holding that blade across the chest. The blood, the big thick blood gooping off the blade, doesn't need to be there. I think you could finally scalpel that away, because blood doesn't do that in real life either, and you know it. That looks like the slime off Ghostbusters 2. Get rid of the blood, and you could have him just polishing the blade. There would only be, if it's a nice clean cut, there would be a very minimal amount of blood actually on the blade. Think about when you cut meat at home in the kitchen. Obviously, there's no blood flowing through the meat that you cut at home. But still, when you slice it, it only leaves a thin residue on the blade. It doesn't coat it in a thick, clumpy layer of blood. Especially since this is probably like a super razor-sharp sword, and he cut that arm incredibly fast. It probably wasn't time for too much blood to cling to it. So, it's a feature it could do without. The slung combi bolter is fine. Sort of a big chunky magazine on it, but it's fine. It works. The armor itself, I really like it. If anything, it's a little bit understated coming from like the Palatine blades of the Emperor's Children and such. Yeah, it's beautiful armor. And nothing... there's a couple things that make it hard to convert for other legions. Namely, the teardrop symbol is a real pain in the dick. If it's just a round gem like he has right at the top right of his chest, or top left as you look at it on the screen, there's a skull on one side of the chest and a round sort of gem on the other. That's fine, but the teardrop that's underneath that bit of rope or lanyard going across his chest, yeah, there's no easy converting that out of this model to use this as a base for another legion, which is a shame. Because this model would look so beautiful in an Emperor's Children army. If you could get rid of all those blood drops, this would fit right into an Emperor's Children army. So that's kind of a shame. But the backpack with the Legion icon and the filigree, that's lovely, and I like that they've made the shoulder pad busier and more impressive, but doesn't feel over the top because the actual symbol is kept very small. It doesn't turn into a giant eagle like the Palatine Aquila and Emperor's Children. So overall, I actually really like the model. I don't remember him having a helmet option. I'll just double check sort of these pictures, make sure. No, he doesn't have a helmet option. Also, interestingly, I can see right where the hand is on the sword, where it's wiping, you can see the striations in the 3D printing on the sculpt. That's interesting. Alright, now getting to sort of the last couple specialists. So Nathaniel Garrow. I like this model a lot. I do, however, think that the Gal Vorback on the base is just a bit excessive. Especially because I find them a pain in the ass to paint. They get that nice correct shade of red. It's not terrible, it's just something I don't enjoy. His splay-legged pose, compared to the legs on, say, Sigismund, works really well. It's a real pity we didn't get a Garrow that we could use in a Death Guard army to fight some Great Crusade battles and such. Instead, you've got to convert him into a different mark of armor. I really like how they've modified the Mark 6 power armor here. So, we're all familiar with Mark 6 and what it should look like, but in this case, it's got these cool knee plates they've added onto it. This sort of proto-Grey Knight iconography running around is like a scripture and trim around the bottom of the greaves or shin armor. The shoulders have a little bit of trim added to them now, and they've got this cool shape where they sort of cut in on the underside of the shoulder pad to just allow a little bit more flexibility to the arm joints. It's a really nice way of updating the Mark 6 design and making it look a bit more artificer, a little bit more special, a bit more perfect for Garrow than a regular set of Mark 6 power armor. And again, I love this style of backpack. Beautiful model all round. The base is a little bit excessive, but nothing crazy. Then we get to Tylos Rubio, who is another one who I think works really well. It's interesting that he has a sort of Force Gladius, just a hangover from the Ultramarines days because he was an Ultramarine. It's cool, it's fine. I think it's a little bit chunky on the handguards, personally. Could have been a little bit more understated, but it works fine. He doesn't have any symbol of the Librarius except for on his chest. I think it's a little hand-painted one on his knee, but I'm not quite certain if it's embossed on there. I think it's hand-painted. Yeah, all the things that are great about Garrow's armour are great here too. Very understated model, and really a good basis for conversions for librarians in 30k in reality. Because of the fact that so little of the armour actually has iconography, except for a little bit on the right shoulder pad with the Eye of the Sigilite, which I think might even only just be very slightly sculpted onto the surface. You could probably clean it off and actually turn this into a great looking librarian for pretty much any legion. And because the weapon is just in the hand, it's not, held against touching some cloak or something, you could quite easily swap out that gladius for a different weapon for a different legion. The only problem is you're left with this huge chunky scabbard on the back, and a very chunky looking bolt gun with a massive handle or pistol grip on it. Neither of which really aid the looks of the model. But he's cool. I just wish they did more knight-errant models. Also, his base is nicer than Garrow's too. It's just a bit of rock. Yeah, it's got some Gelvor back on it, but it's not a full-on Gelvor back model. Alright, last two. I'll save the worst for last. So we have Janisha Kroll here. She is busier than a Sister of Silence, but looks so similar to them that it works out really great. I love the little iconography that's on her loincloth. It's sort of between her legs and hard to see, but it's got these really cool little filigree and aquila pattern. Looks great. Her armour, the bits of chainmail between the plates, it's those little details that sort of not every sculptor adds on, but they have here and it really works. Because it shows that the armour is layered, that there is protection in the joints, and that the flexibility is gained by having this sort of stuff there. Her sword is a nice looking sword. Again, it's just a slightly fancier version of the blade the other Sisters of Silence carry. She's just a tiny bit more busy than a regular Sister of Silence, and that's great. That's the sort of thing I look for in these special characters. That they're not so special. They look like they're Primarch or something. They're too ostentatious, too busy, too much shit happening. Which is where this guy falls down. Because Valdor should look like any other custodian. The story goes that he did, and that Forge World management said, no, we want him to stand out more. So the sculptor went back and kind of half-arsing, sort of half-jokingly, added a bunch of extra shit to it, thinking, I'll never approve this. And they'll go back to my first design. Well, unfortunately for him, they approve this. The giant bardish, Eastern European bardish style of spear does not add to the model. A sleeker looking weapon would have worked better than this massive axe that he's got as a weapon. The crow that was trying to fly through a window and accidentally smashed against its reflection on his shoulder pad and it's embedded there for all time looks terrible. The giant demon cow head, I don't know what the hell that is, adds nothing to the other shoulder except making him busy, and it's as wide out the back of his shoulder as his torso is out the front. He's got that terrible beast's arm with flesh and fur hanging down the front of him. Just if all those superfluous details. This is a masterclass in terrible. Just so busy. And the thing is, if you took off Mufasa's head off the shoulder here, took off the crow off the other side, and that bit of cloth, and just maybe cut down the blade on the spear a little bit, perfect. It would have been perfect. And a lot of people who do conversions of this guy, they do exactly that. They just softly go, you know what, this model is so busy, let's just chop, these bits we don't need off. And yeah, he has a big base. It's like a Mons base. It has this same big plinth behind it with the Thousand Suns ruins of Prospero. Very much where the character is set. But his actual game base is a much smaller, more refined version of that. And I think that's great. That's the sort of display base I think works. And the reason I think you can get away with a bigger display base here, unlike on someone like, say, Sigismund, is because this guy is a much bigger scale than Sigismund. He's almost the size of a Primarch. So you can get away with having a Primarch's level of base detail. Where you can't get away with that is Sigismund. And that's it. That's all of them. Unfortunately, we have no Lucius the Eternal, or Lucius, just Captain of the Emperor's Children in 30k model. We don't have anyone for the Iron Warriors, Iron Hands, Salamanders, Raven Guard, Ultramarines. Yet, there are some sort of sub-characters out there that are released as like event-only or Forge World-only characters. For instance, Narek Dragur, Praevian Consul for the Iron Warriors, is technically a special character of theirs. There's also Ortelion Score, technically the Delegata special character for the Alpha Legion. There's also an Ultramarine Legion Herald. Technically, there's some special characters out there, but a lot of the legions don't have someone. And it's a real shame. It's one of those areas where Forge Worlds really pull their finger out and try and fill in some gaps here, especially with the custom Praetors and HQs not existing for every legion yet. Probably a good space to put them in. And of course, we haven't seen the actual models they come up with for our Dark Angels characters yet. Really holding out hope for Causewayne dropping straight away, because I fucking love Causewayne. He's a badass. And it'd be great to see what his rules are too. I'm really interested to see what his rules are versus Sigismund, who will win in that fight. And I'm hoping it'll be a draw. I don't want either of them to be the best, but I do know Causewayne can beat Sigismund, at least in the books. Anyway, Mac with the Outer Circle. This is a quick overview of the character series, what I love about the sculpts and dislike about the sculpts. I will get back to the Rights of War soon. Shooter McGavin, I know you're watching. That's right up there with Abe Lincoln and the alligator in the sky, right? And Chubbs. Yes, I will be getting back to the Rights of War for the different legions soon. I just wanted to wait until the next book comes out because I'm about to cover the Night Lords. And I want that extra Right of War. And I want to see what the Contakar Terminators rules bring to the table, because it may change how I perceive the Rights of War functioning for them. So it's an important little thing. I don't want to skip over them, because the Night Lords are going to be in the next batch. I want to cover them straight away. So I'm waiting for the next book to drop. That's why I haven't done any more in that series yet. The Legion Rights of War are coming. So anyway, thank you all for watching, and see you all